I'm Brian Christner, and this is The Byte, a bite-sized podcast about containers, cloud, and tech.
Welcome to The Byte, and in this episode, we're going to cover the introduction to Traefik. So what is Traefik? The architecture, really understand the use cases, and we're going to walk through a demo, and finally, I'll give you a lab you can do on your own. Let's get started and see exactly what Traefik is, shall we? All right, I prepared some slides just as a background of the introduction, a little bit about myself, as well as Traefik, the architecture. So let's take a look at the first slide about Brian Christner, which is me. I am Brian Christner, co-founder and DevOps engineer SRE for 56k.cloud. I'm also the founder of The Byte. The Byte is the training platform which actually hosts the training program for learning Traefik. My background is in engineering, cloud architecture, and I'm combining these all the time. I am very passionate about open source and I contribute to every project I can. And additionally, I am a Docker captain, original batch since 2016. I'm a Traefik ambassador and I'm a really avid mountain biker as well. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see a mix of Docker, Traefik, Kubernetes, and mountain biking. Very random, but that's just how it goes. All right, the agenda for this course or for this introduction is really an overview. We want to see what is Traefik from the very high level, too long didn't read version. So we're going to cover Traefik, the background about Traefik, and understand why Traefik was developed and what use case it's trying to solve. Next, we're going to discuss the architecture on Traefik, really understand what Traefik is, and it's a reverse proxy, edge router, load balancer. We hear all these buzzwords, but let's see what it actually does. And finally, we'll understand the components of Traefik. So how does it actually work with the configuration? Next, we'll do a demo. In this demo, we're actually going to show you Traefik in action with the dashboard and a little demo application I put together to kind of, brighten your day. And finally, the lab. I built a lab up. It's very basic. It's actually from the Traefik training, and you can do this yourself, but it's really the getting started with Traefik, understanding how to deploy it on your local machine or your test environment, and that's what we're going to cover. So the next slide is the Traefik overview. And before we get started, we should really cover, a little bit of statistics about Traefik itself, because it's pretty impressive where Traefik started. Actually, Traefik is 5 years old yesterday, or the day before actually, so this week, and it's come a long way. I mean, if you look at it on Docker Hub, they have over 2 billion downloads of Traefik. So 2 billion basically Docker pulls from Docker Hub. Incredible. So it shows you that it's one of the top 10 Docker containers downloaded from Docker Hub. So it's very, very popular. And if you can actually predict it or say it, it's actually becoming a standard for reverse proxies or edge routing. Next up has 30,000 stars in GitHub. Now, myself, I use GitHub quite often, basically every day. And my colleague actually said he uses GitHub as his social media because you can follow what other people are doing. And I use stars to track things, but also we can determine, the popularity of something by how many people are tracking a project. So 30,000 stars in GitHub, 500 plus contributors. So there's a lot of people contributing to the project. And as I mentioned before, it's a top 10 download on Docker Hub. All right. Enough of the marketing spiel. Let's get into the Traefik use cases. And you've probably seen these use cases before: reverse proxy, API gateway, load balancing, certificate management, Kubernetes ingress. Yes, it does all these things. And the brilliant thing is it does it automatically for it. So it auto-magically configures based on the configuration we give it. And I'll show you a bit in the lab in the demo, but that is what we're doing. So if we look at let's first look at some of the customers here. All right, so Traefik customers, obviously 56K. We are a customer of Traefik, and we also resell it to our customers as well as implement it for our customers. Everything from small government entities to large enterprises and everything in between. And there's some very big logos up there you can see. I won't go through them, but you can see that there are other customers out there, including this beautiful Apple logo, which is quite impressive, right? So there are some big enterprises behind this customer as well. Now, containers, and I should update this slide because the Traefik birthday of 5 years old, they actually announced the rebranding of Traefik. So Traefik, the company, is now referred to as Traefik Labs. And Traefik Labs is not only Traefik, but there's other products there as well. So Traefik Enterprise Edition. So if you want a little bit more high availability and a bit more features, you can go into the enterprise direction. If you want service mesh, there's mesh and Traefik Pilot, which I'll actually show you a little bit later. It's a new SaaS offering that's built on top of Traefik. So we'll see that in a bit. All right, about Traefik itself, let's take a look at Traefik and basically why was it developed. So here's the founder, Emil. Emil developed Traefik because he found, a pain point, which a lot of us really experience in the reverse proxy or proxy area. And if you've used HA proxy, if you used Apache, IIS, any of these, they work well, but every time I change my application, I need to change my proxy or my web server. And it's very difficult to keep them in sync. Every time the application changes, I need to change this. So Emil came up with the concept, why don't we make it more dynamic? Why don't proxies automatically configure based on what they're monitoring? So essentially, Traefik automatically discovers the configuration and makes the configurations inside Traefik and exposes it. So essentially, Traefik is watching your orchestrator, Docker, Kubernetes, Nomad, Amazon, insert your orchestrator here. And it's watching the orchestrator. So if a new container starts or a configuration changes, Traefik adapts to this change and automatically serves the request for us. So it's easier, right? It just makes our life easier, which, like a typical developer is like water. We follow the easiest path. So very similar path. So if it's easier, it's going to be much more adopted, which, as we've seen, it's been done. All right, the background about Traefik, it is written in Go. So low-level language, extremely fast. Kubernetes is written in Go, Docker, as well as, it's a very popular language because it's very, very efficient, fast, but it's also a bit complex. But we're not writing Traefik, so that's a benefit. Traefik is also an edge router. And what does an edge router mean? I'll explain it in the next slide, actually. And you can see in this diagram here, we have on the left-hand side, we have from the internet. So we have API domain, we have domain.web, back office domain, and then our infrastructure. So Traefik is basically combining these two worlds. And that's really the benefit. It's automatically discovering what's coming, so the ingress communication, and then translating it to our infrastructure. And as I mentioned before, it natively integrates with all these services here that you see on the screen, and it synchronizes changes based on your orchestrator. Brilliant. Okay, let's dig a little deeper. I'm sure you're still not convinced. What is an edge router? As I mentioned before, an edge router is your gatekeeper to your infrastructure. And I like to say we have an incoming request to our infrastructure. Traefik then intercepts this request, determines where it should be sent into your infrastructure. So it determines, this request is actually for service 1. So do I need to manipulate this request before I send it? Do I need to define anything? Yes, no. Okay, send it on to service 1. And that's how it works. So Traefik is constantly watching the backend, your infrastructure, to the front end. And that's really how this is working. Now, how does auto discovery work? It's as I said, Traefik is watching the configuration from your infrastructure. And anytime a configuration changes, it's changing Traefik to watch for these services. So for example, you can see HTTP domain first. We can see then Traefik is looking for this request and, I have a match here. So it matches this request to this service. And that's how it works. And then we can manipulate, we can actually configure how this request is handled by Traefik itself. So we can do a lot of things. We can attach information to the request, we can rewrite the request. And also Traefik is handling these requests. So if another service starts here, it goes, hey, I'm the third one. Do I have a third one? No, but I'm ready in case we do have a third request come up. So Traefik is doing all this auto discovery for us automatically, which is brilliant because, this is what the pain point is in HA proxy Apache IIS is every time a service starts, we have to configure it to say, hey, this is your new service, the ports, da, 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 da. And now with Traefik, we don't have to do that. Traefik providers. Now we're getting into the components of Traefik. A provider is the link from Traefik to your infrastructure. And your infrastructure can be anything from an orchestrator, can be a key value store. So example, Redis or console, or it could be a configuration file. So, or Traefik itself. All these things can be providers. And then we configure Traefik to connect to the provider and work with the API. And then that's how it detects the changes and makes itself available to your infrastructure. And in the Docker case, we're actually mounting Traefik, the Docker daemon into Traefik. So then it's actually watching for daemon changes. If a container starts, stops, changes configuration, then Traefik is automatically aware of it. And that's how we're watching these changes. And then you can see here, the API call is going back and forth between the provider, provider 1, provider 2. And that's another brilliant thing. You can have multiple providers. So you're not stuck to just one component. You can go to a physical VM. You can go to Kubernetes, Docker, etc. So you can route to all these different things. Then finally, we can have special configurations based on these providers, how they work. So, maybe Docker works different than Kubernetes. We can handle, the ingress traffic differently. And that's really some of the benefits we have with providers. Available providers, you can see Docker, Kubernetes. I mean, there's a huge list of providers. Actually, not on this list is Amazon's AWS ECS, which is now new in 2.3. And that's brand new. So now we can actually have Traefik running in front of ECS, which is quite cool. All right, enough of me presenting slides. We want to see this in action, right? So let's head over to my browser. And let me pull my browser up. And here's the dashboard for Traefik. So I already have Traefik deployed as a demo. And this demo is just really essentially to walk you through the dashboard and the features. And then once we understand it, we'll actually deploy it ourselves through the command line. So here's the dashboard 2.3. And you can see there's different routing capabilities. So you can see there's HTTP routers, there's TCP routers, UDP. So we can have different possibilities. We can route TCP requests or UDP requests, which is quite cool. In this example, I'm using only HTTP, and you can see I have 6 HTTP routers, 6 services, and 7 middlewares. But let's also take a look at the entry points here. The entry points is exactly what it says. It's how the traffic comes into your infrastructure. And we're actually determining these ports are the only ports allowed into Traefik that we're monitoring. So we're watching all 3 of these ports. If we receive a request, then Traefik's going to take this request and hand it off to the appropriate service. Let's take a look at routers. We click Explore, and we have some routers here. So on the right-hand side, you can see which provider it's using. This symbol right here actually means it's a Traefik provider or internal provider. This is obviously the Docker provider. And I've deployed a Cat application. So you can see cats.webwrench is the name of the application. It has TLS, and I have 2 different ones. So you can see web and web secure. And if you remember back to my dashboard, I have 2 ports, port 80 and 443. And the reason why I have 2 is so I can receive requests in HTTP and rewrite it to HTTPS. So I can actually watch both ports and make sure that we rewrite requests as needed. If we jump into the router, so here is actually the HTTPS router. You can see I'm watching 443, and it's connecting to this particular router. Here are the different middlewares I've connected to it. So I have Basic Authentication, which means I'm assigning a very generic username password to my service. Since my service doesn't have username passwords, I'm letting Traefik make basic authentication for me. Next up is middleware compression. This actually does gzip compression on my application. So it zips up any images. It's supposed to be making it faster. And anytime we can make an application faster is brilliant. Next one is middleware errors. And I've used a custom error middleware. And this allows me to serve up very nice 404 pages or 403 versus, just the standard black and white text that we see. So it's kind of a nice way to present errors and make it consistent across all your applications. And I'll show you how that works in a moment. And the final middleware is rate limit. And this is going more to the API side. And the rate limit, I actually set it up, and you can see the middleware configuration over here to the right. So if we scroll down, you see test off. I have 2 users assigned, password user, test compress, test error pages, and rate limit. So average, and it's averaging how many requests per second, and then 1 is the thing. So is the burstable rate. What that means is if I try to refresh the application more than twice within a second, it's going to give me a rate warning. So it's preventing people from overloading the system or abusing APIs. And I'll show you also how that works. So we can see the router details. I have success. So Traefik is actually monitoring the health of the service and the router. And then we're telling it what host name to use, what service to connect to, entry point, service, etc. And you can see all through this, Traefik is monitoring each component. So it tells us, the middleware is healthy, the router is healthy. If we jump into the service, here is our service. It has 3 different containers running. And again, you can see status is success, true. It's all healthy down here. And actually, I have 3 containers deployed. So you can see 1, 2, 3. And they're all healthy as well. So I have 3 different services connected to Traefik, automatically load balanced, doing all the magic. So let's open a new tab and take a look at exactly what this looks like. And I'm going to open a private window because I want to make sure that it rewrites. So cats.webwrench. And if I go in here, you can see automatically it rewrites. It adds a HTTPS, adds a certificate, let's encrypt certificate automatically. And my username is Traefik. Password is training. And there you go. Here's my cat application. And it's a random cat GIF generator. And you can see down here, delivered by container. Now, if I refresh, you can see the container changes each time I refresh. And it shows you various cat images, which is brilliant. Now, if I go too fast, went too fast and missed the error. There you go. And there's my custom error page. So 429, sorry, you're making too many requests to our servers. Brilliant, nice, beautiful web site that presents our error page versus a normal 429 is just black and white tests, pretty ugly. And I can also do like this. So if I type in a wrong path to my application, I get a 404 error. It's a bit nicer, and I can make it consistent across all the applications connected to Traefik as well. If I go back, refresh, you can see I'm also assigning a Let's Encrypt certificate. So automatically to my domain, cats.webwren.ch. And the idea here is I'm using DNS to actually challenge DigitalOcean and create certificates automatically. So if I make a new subdomain, it'll automatically create a new certificate for me without anything on my side. So it's really, really cool. All right, that's the quick demo of Traefik 2.3. New in 2.3, brand new, is Traefik Pilot. So if we click on the upper right-hand corner, my username, I've already registered this instance as a Pilot instance. And Pilot is brand new. And Pilot is a SaaS solution that basically monitors my instance and tells me a couple things. Tells me if there's any security problems with my instance, as well as health. So it tells me if it's up, offline, etc. And brand new, as far as this week, we also get metrics. So if I click on the metrics, you can see requests per second, total requests, request duration, and you can see it. You can do it per instance as well. It's very easy to connect a new instance. To register a new instance, you just click this button. It gives you this code that you put into your config file, and you are off and running. It's that simple. So that's Traefik Pilot. The final thing with Traefik Pilot is there's now like a plugin store. Previously, Traefik had middlewares, and these middlewares were, just a set of middlewares that Traefik provided. One of the most requested features by the Traefik community was, I would like to write my own middleware. So now with Traefik Pilot, there's a middleware store. You can create your own plugin. And now we're building new plugins that just complement Traefik even further. So you can see there's demo, there's block pass, simple cache. So there's some cool plugins, and the community is writing more as we speak. So this is only going to grow. So that's a quick tutorial of Pilot as well. Now, let's jump in back to our slides quickly and take a look at the lab. In the lab overview, we're going to look at Traefik from a local perspective. So that was the demo. That's everything turned on. If I look back here, how many middlewares I have enabled, that's a lot of middlewares. I have all sorts of things running. But if you want to start from scratch, let's just start from zero quickly in this overview lab. This overview lab, We're going to assume you have Docker installed locally on your machine or using Docker for Mac, Docker for Windows, Docker for Linux, whatever your flavor. And we're going to start Traefik from zero. We're going to attach a service to it called the Who Am I service. And then we're going to understand how this all works and enable the dashboard, etc. How's that sound? Sound good? All right, let's head over to our, oops, let me move this to a different screen, huh? All right, there we go. Make this a bit bigger. So the Traefik overview, we have this Docker Compose file. And in here, you can see that it's very simple. So I have the services Traefik. I'm telling it what version I want to use. Here's the command to actually execute Traefik configuration. So we're just telling it use insecure method. The provider, as you saw in the presentation before, we want to use Docker and log level info. And that's all we need to configure Traefik to get up and running. We're also going to expose port 8080 for our application and port 8080 for our dashboard. Final configuration, we're mounting the Docker daemon, the socket, into the container. And that allows Traefik to then see when containers stop and start, as I mentioned before. This is part of the auto discovery. Now, the Who Am I service is actually written by Containus. And this is just an easy service that basically reports the requester as well as container information. You can see we just assigned this label, and the label is here basically, and we're allowed to give it a host name. So this is all running locally. So whoami.docker.localhost. So if I take this file now and just go docker stack deploy -c, oops, minus C, Docker Compose Traefik, and just execute that. Let me just move myself out of the way so you don't get. All right, there we go. So it's up and running. It was already running anyway, but I just want to make sure that it was running. So Docker service ls to make sure it is running. Yes. So I do have Traefik running, one replica, and I have Traefik Who Am I. So you see, just with one command, I deployed Traefik and my service together. Now, if I head back over to my browser and I open up 0.0.0.0.8080, there's my dashboard. And if I go to explore, you can see these two here are actually my Who Am I service. So if I go, I can actually open up Who Am I, .docker.localhost. And there you go, there's our service. And that's actually routing through Traefik. It's doing all the configuration for us. So that was a quick, easy demo on how we can easily deploy Traefik with a single command. If I go back to my command line here, you can see I only did Docker stack deploy -c, the Docker Compose file, Traefik. And that deploys Traefik and our service Who Am I all in one go. And that's it. Once it's up and running, then you can actually have your dashboard running as we see here. So 008080. And we have a complete dashboard running, and you can see all the services and routers, everything that's available, and our service is running as well. Brilliant. I mean, that was less than 5 minutes. We can have Traefik up and running. Now, the idea is now we can start configuring it further. We can start doing really cool middlewares, secure it, do all these practices that bring it to the next level. Now, what's next? What are we deploying? And the load balancing services. So how does load balancing work once we deploy our application? So the Who Am I Docker localhost, the request comes into Traefik, and then it goes down to the Who Am I containers. We saw that also in the Cats demonstration, where we had 3 Cats applications, and as we requested, Traefik automatically load balanced by round robin to the proper container. So you can see as it goes through. We're able to open the dashboard, review the interface, and investigate the Who Am I service through the dashboard, and we're just happy days, right? So here's the link to the lab, and you can see github.com, 56K cloud, Traefik training. The resource is 01 getting started, and this will help you get started using exactly what I just showed you. And finally, what's next? So now we understand Traefik, but how do I go further? How do I actually become production, move it to production? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because I have a traffic training. Traffic training is complete. It is available through the Byte. And we just covered a small portion of the traffic introduction, explaining exactly the background, Docker Swarm, traffic, the general concepts, but we go a bit deeper into the actual architecture in this section. Next up is how do we configure traffic? Really, how all the labels work. How do we really configure traffic itself? Routing and load balancing, we can configure routing and load balancing exactly how we want it to work for the different services. We go through how to enable Let's Encrypt. So making certificates automatically assigned to our services, or you might have your own certificate. How do we bring our own certificate? Finally, next up, we go to middlewares. We understand how middlewares work and maybe write our own. Observability, learn how to turn on monitoring, logging, and really how to maintain traffic once it's running. Then finally, operations, day 2. So what happens once it's deployed? What should we look for? Security tips, all these things we need to look at. And then finally, advanced tips. We look into, for example, security. Again, if you have 1.7 deployed, we talk about how to go from 1.7 to 2.x. And we just cover some more advanced tips this way as well. All right, getting started. If you want to get started, I do have a 50% off coupon for the course. So thebyte.io/traffic training. This will get you a 50% off the course and allow you to actually go through the course. And there's a Slack channel, so you can communicate with me once you're going through the course. And also, once you're done with the course, you could bring your challenges to me. Say, hey, I'm trying to do this in production, or I'm trying to get this to work. All these things, I want to make sure you succeed in this course. So that's very important to me as well. The Byte Accelerator, this is the next step. So I also provide personal coaching and onboarding in the event you want to try to extend your cloud native journey past traffic. So you want to go Kubernetes, Docker, or do you want to bring in tracing? You want to bring all these external tools in the cloud native landscape. I help you plan which tools to use, as well as plan your journey to succeed with these tools. That is all for this introduction section. Again, my name is Brian Christner. You can find me at I Do My Own Tricks. Also, thebyte.io is where you can find the training course and all the materials here. And thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Byte. You can find the show notes at thebyte.io and follow me on Twitter at I Do My Own Tricks.